If you feel like you have a bad habit of beating yourself up and that's impacting your mental health, you definitely want to make sure that you watch this video because it's specifically for you. My name is Hicks. If you don't know who I am, I'm a mental health coach. I help people improve their mental health, usually by about 75% within 90 days using a conditioning-based method. Used to be suicidal, overcame depression, and have been depression-free for over 16 years. So I make these videos because I want you to have the mental health that you deserve. Today I wanted to share a story from a recent interaction I had with a client that I think can provide a valuable lesson for most people. So my client is such a good-hearted man, really compassionate guy. Whenever you'd meet someone like this, he's the type of guy that you'd instantaneously, trust with like a key to your house because you can tell there's just not a bad malicious bone in his body. And he had a pattern. We all have mental patterns that cause us distress. And the pattern that he had that was causing him issues was particularly in romantic situations with women. He'd find himself getting all torn up in knots about whether or not he was doing the right thing for that particular person he was dating at the time. And so this girl that he was very interested for a long time with, she had a perpetual pattern of reacting to him where she would push him away. She would be sort of angry and confrontational. And it became quite evident as he was talking to me about this that she had pretty severe trust issues. And so he learned as he got to know her and as he spoke to friends of hers that she had a very sort of abusive past. She had been in a relationship with a guy who had hit her and who had, just really treated her unwell. And so what I was trying to help him understand is that the reaction that he was getting from her had nothing to do with him, because he would get himself all tied up in knots thinking, oh my gosh, what did I not say right? What did I not do right? What do I need to do differently to get her to understand I really care about her? I would never hurt her, right? So he would always come back to the table with her and be compassionate and caring, and his intent truly was pure. It's not like he was getting angry at her and interjecting his own negativity into the loop of the relationship, but rather he was only putting in good input with her, and we verified that many times. And but still, he was so caught up in this idea that he was doing something wrong. That was the first big delusion that he was getting into that was causing him a lot of pain. The second big delusion that he was getting into that really, really sent him in a spiral was the idea that there was something wrong with him. And this is one of the big universal laws I've seen to be true with the human psyche, which is that as soon as we create a belief that the problem is who we are as an individual, that creates massive feelings of depression. Because now all of a sudden, we personalize it. It's not just that, oh, I have this communication issue with this person, or, oh, I have this compatibility issue with this person. Now we've created a meaning of, oh, it's me. I'm the problem. I'm the source of her pain. And so what I tried to help him understand is that it had nothing to do with him. I asked him, have you seen her treat other men like this? And he said yes, because he knew another guy that she had dated before. And so we realized that you can influence other people, you can influence other people's patterns of response, but you can't control their patterns of response. And in his particular situation, where they had only been dating a short while, and, he knew very clearly that he was standing in his own self-worth. By the end of it, he was treating her in a way that he could feel he could sleep soundly at night knowing that he had treated her in a way that resonated with his own values. All we had to do was get him out of those two fundamental delusions. The idea that he was doing something wrong, that it was really about right and wrong. Sometimes it's not about right and wrong. It's just about compatibility. Like, are his particular character traits going to be compatible with her patterns, right? And we realized that fundamentally that just was not going to take place. The gap was too wide for him to bridge in that particular situation. And the second delusion we had to break out of was that there was something wrong with him. And there's nothing wrong with him. And what I helped him see is that you're going to be able to have a very fulfilled relationship with somebody, but you got to find somebody who's aligned with you. It doesn't have to be someone who's identical with you, someone you get along with perfectly. It just has to be somebody who has a personality where you can actually still bridge the gap and connect with them. And in this particular situation, she just kept putting up wall after wall after wall after wall, and it was just too challenging for him to break through. So what I helped him see is that we tend to blame ourselves because we think that if we blame ourselves, that that's somehow going to make it better. You know, the idea there is that either if we just somehow make ourselves feel bad enough, that will somehow make it better. And it never does, right? Because it brings our energy down, causes us to spiral in depressive lanes of thinking, doesn't really get us very many answers, doesn't get us much clarity on how to do things differently. And then, of course, sometimes we'll blame ourselves because we're the type of person who really wants to have a sense of responsibility. We're the type of person who wants to take charge and make things better in our life. And that intention is great, but there's a big difference between blaming and taking responsibility, right? So responsibility can be thought of as responsibility or ability to respond, meaning in this situation with her, he did have the ability to change how he responded. And that was one of the things he and I workshopped over several weeks was, okay, well, how are you communicating with her? Maybe there's a way you're triggering her without knowing it. Maybe we can tweak that so that you can be a little bit more accommodating to her sensitivities. And after we did a full audit of how he was responding to her, it became very clear to me that really he was doing everything within his control to try to influence the situation. And there were some certain beliefs that she had about men and about human beings in general that were going to make it essentially impossible for him to, connect with her. And so in order for her to have a successful relationship down the line, she's going to have to come up with some new beliefs and meanings. She's going to have to find a little forgiveness and realize just because somebody hurt her in the past, that doesn't mean that all men are going to hurt her. And he realized that was a job a little bit too big for him to take on as just a guy trying to date her. And so even though he was working on changing his ability to respond, he had then slipped into the blaming factor where you're now no longer trying to make things different. You're now no longer trying to improve or change the response that you're getting, but rather we're just blaming ourselves. And blame never helps. Responsibility helps if you're taking control in an area where you can control the outcome or you can at least influence the outcome. But in this particular case, the woman was beyond influence for him. And so I share this with you because chances are, if you have had a habit of blaming yourself, there's a decent chance that you're either doing one of two things. Either one, you're blaming yourself without taking responsibility. So maybe you're blaming yourself for something that is currently in your control, but you think that blaming is the same as taking responsibility, and it's not. Taking responsibility is taking new action to make it better. Blaming is just beating ourselves up for it not being better already. So that might be one of the challenges for you. The second type of situation you might be experiencing if you're blaming yourself a lot is you might be blaming yourself for something that actually was outside of your control, right? It had nothing to do with you. It was just the circumstances of the time, or it was somebody else's decision, or whoever knows, right? And sure, maybe you could have done something slightly different to get a slightly different outcome, but you'll drive yourself crazy going down all those what if paths. So you really want to be honest with yourself. Are you beating yourself up about something that's not in your control? In which case it's time to let that go and realize that you probably did the best that you could at the time. Maybe you need to derive a lesson. Maybe you need to approach a similar situation in the future differently so you can learn from the past. But learning from the past and then looking towards the future is a very different mode than just staring at the past and beating yourself up for it. Right? And then if you're finding that you're not taking action or responsibility for something that is within your control, then it's time to do that, right? Maybe you know very clearly what you need to do differently. And if you don't, maybe it's time to get some guidance. There's no harm in getting a second opinion, getting somebody to help give you some additional insight. but you got to make sure that you take some form of new action in order to get things different. So blame never empowers us. That's kind of the big takeaway I really want you to get from this. Blame never makes anything better. It usually just paralyzes us into sadness and inaction, and it doesn't help anybody. So time to move on from that if that's been your case. So hope this has been helpful to you. I'd love to see your comments below. I always welcome that, so that way I can get you some extra guidance if need be. And if you found this valuable, please just engage with it in some way. Either like it, share it, comment, something like that, because every engagement helps pass these messages on to people who really need to see them. So it's kind of a small way for you to help other people's mental health as well. But I hope this has been helpful, and I'll be excited to see you and serve you in the next video. See ya.